If you recall at the start of the season, I said I'd be sitting down with some of my favourite people for the next couple of weeks. Well, those couple of weeks have come to an end, and I, for one, am sad. This is the final episode of I'm As Shocked As You Are, episode 4, but fear not, because we have a fantastic guest in the studio. We've got DJ Fat Tony joining me. I first met Tony at a 12-step meeting, I don't think he'd mind me saying, somewhere where we both need to be. Well, certainly where I need to be. 6 months clean and sober, by the way. And it's quite a big deal, but we'll save that for another episode. He's now a globally famous DJ, and he's been a central figure in British fashion since the 80s and 90s. He's DJ'd for the likes of Madonna, Michael Jackson, and Prince. He's been friends with everyone who's anyone since forever. Kate Moss, Boy George, George Michael. And he's a self-proclaimed cocky cunt. His words, not mine. It's also worth mentioning he is an award-winning Sunday Times best-selling author. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome DJ Fat Tony into the studio. Let's do it.
Oh yeah, I'll come to look at this little box. Hi.
Hi, Tony. Thanks for coming.
You're welcome.
Do you know what? I think ADHD is a good place to start with this podcast, right? So basically, this is the last episode in the first series, and what a way to end it with you coming on the show.
It's the best episode of the last first series.
The thing is, right, like I always want to improve what I'm doing. So I've been listening back to the podcasts, the episodes that I've done up until this one, and I've noticed because of my ADHD, there's a few things that always happen. So I need to let the guest speak more. So I'm going to make a very conscious effort. Like I interrupt. So if I do that in this podcast, can you just say to me, you're doing it again?
Yeah, I will. You know, the thing is, I do a podcast called Fashion Radio, and we're on season 3 now. And the first season, I was doing exactly that.
Yeah.
I would talk over people. I wouldn't allow them to talk. And some of the guests used to go, I'm here to talk about me. And I'd be like, oh, yeah. And the guests that I have on typically are a lot more interesting than I am, so I ought to just let them talk. Another thing I do is I ask a question, and sometimes I'll ask another question over a question before they've even answered the first. That's typical ADHD.
So, but I knew that you have ADHD and you speak about it a lot, and so do I. So I thought I'd just get that out in the open. That's what I've noticed I do.
This is going to be a fun podcast. Me and you,
yeah, exactly.
Fucking a voice off.
You will just be talking over each other the whole time, yeah. Tony, I've got to say, I feel very close to you at the moment, not because we've been hanging out loads, but because I've just read your book.
Oh, you just read it?
Yeah. And
what took you 2 years?
Well, I thought this is actually me being very professional because I knew that you were going to come on the podcast and I wanted to but I was meaning to read it for a long time. And I don't do audiobooks for some reason. I like actually, because hardly anything is analog nowadays. Do you know what I mean? It's all kind of digital. So and I really enjoyed it. And I read it over this weekend and I knew a lot of your story, but I didn't know all of it. What a journey you've been on, man.
You know, the book itself, took 2.5 years to write because it wasn't true. It wasn't truthful. And I kept going back and changing it.
Really?
Because when you start to write a book, you kind of want everyone to love you. You kind of want everyone to be wowed by your journey. And the first 3 or 4 months of writing it, doing different chapters and then moving on to another chapter, because some of those chapters were really hard to write. Yeah. And even really hard to talk about, let alone sit down and
I can guess which ones. Yeah.
And we kept going back and changing stuff because I was like, no, that's not right. Because my truth is my truth. It's not necessarily the truth. Yeah. It's how I see it. Yeah. And what you find is when you interview other people for your book and they tell you stories, your story, but their adaptation of your story, things start to get blurred. And, you find that everybody thinks they're the most funniest person in the room and they always think that the story's about them. So they'll give you that adaptation where they were the funny one. And then you think afterwards, was you even actually there? I don't think you was. But, so it took 2.5 years because that process was, I wanted it to be the most truthful story ever because no one writes books that are honest. And I just thought, I've carried shame around all my life and I just thought, put it all in that book.
Was it cathartic? Was it a healing
to say the least,
to be able to get that out?
Yeah, it was not at first. halfway through, I got to the abuse chapter, and I thought I dealt with most of that stuff in that book. I thought I dealt with. I've never dealt with anything.
That was
I'm
hard
a plower.
to read.
I'm a plower. I plow.
Yeah.
I go through life pushing things to the side, and it builds up and builds up, and eventually it's going to come in and tumble down, and you're going to drown. It's going to bury you.
Yeah.
And I've done that all my life. By moving on from it, it's not dealing with it. Is what I've learned.
Right.
And so when it got to that chapter, the first day that we started writing, Mikey was like, "Come on, we need to do this," and I was like, "Can we not do it another day?" He was like, "No, let's do it." So that day, I started doing that chapter, and what happened was, like, it was 9 a.m, and by midday, I was violently sick. I was projectile vomiting in my house.
This was the chapter about your abuser,
Yeah, about
right?
the abuser, yeah. And I was vomiting in my house, and I said, "We've got to stop. I feel like I've got food poisoning."
My God.
And what happened was that night, I was in bed. I had a fever. I was in bed, and I could smell him. I could see him. It was just awful. And what I'd learned at that point was that was trauma.
Of course,
So I went
coming
off and
out.
found an amazing trauma therapist and did a 1.5 years of trauma therapy during writing that book, because it was the only way I could get through that stuff that I'd felt I dealt with. And even the stuff about my dad and all the other things that I put in there, I had to deal with. And at the same time as writing that book, I was going through the worst breakup of my life. Like, literally, after an 8-year relationship of chaos and drama, which was an addiction in itself.
Yeah, you talk about that, your addiction to drama.
Oh, mainly. Like, literally, I lived on that triangle.
Clean and using.
Oh, the worst.
Yeah. How are you with that now? Are you feel like you've calmed down quite
my
a
life
bit?
is, I don't have any skeletons and I don't have any secrets.
Yeah.
Which is a remarkable thing.
The truth will sort of set you free.
And it really does. And it's just those stupid cliche lines that,
Yeah.
it's true. And I don't have that. And I've got to this place in my life where I'm truly blessed in so many respects, because I don't suffer with the past.
Yeah.
The past no longer
Is that
has
down,
a hold on me.
Would you say that's down to the 12 steps and the time you put into recovery, but then also the book, and then with some time and just processing stuff?
Look,
and because you talk about self-love at the end of the book, which kind of made me reflect on where I'm at with that. And I've still got a long way to go with self-love.
Well,
can I tell you, just the other day, I went to a 12-step meeting, and it was in a room where there was a mirror sort of behind the on the wall, and I didn't like my reflection, so I had to go and sit on the side, and I was really disappointed. I thought I've made some good progress here, but it's just and I don't know what that is, and I just think it's shame. It's so much of addiction, I think, is about what happened to us as little people. And that's, you talked very candidly about what you went through as a child, and there were similarities, like my dad had cancer when I was 7, and some of my earliest memories were of him on a hospital bed, skeleton thin, bald head, wires coming out of him. And at that age, at 7, I didn't really know what was going on. At that age, it was more, do we have to go back to that smelly building, which was the hospital, that when it always has those really sort of detergent, really terrible. And so, those kind of experiences, that it's gonna affect you growing up.
Well, it does.
It's even if it's not our fault.
No, none of it's our fault. The majority of it's not our fault.
Especially at that age.
But we like to think it's our fault because it serves us. It serves a purpose.
Yeah.
We sink really quickly into victim mode, even though we don't know it. And as a kid, when that stuff happens, why does it always happen to me? Oh, I deserve it. I was a fat kid because of the abuse that happened to me prior. I become fat, so it become a castle wall, so no one would ever come near me again. I built, and that served a purpose. That served a way, and it's like everything in life we go through. My mum had cancer. That was like, that wasn't the issue. The issue was the fact that I felt unloved at that point in time.
Well, that's how we perceive it.
That's exactly that, and it was like, I didn't even care about her having cancer because I didn't understand what cancer was.
Yeah, exactly.
And then with my father, the way he was drinking on the back of that, turned me into the biggest victim, because I'd made it all about me, about how dare he do this to me and my mum.
Yeah.
Never about what he was doing to himself. That didn't come into it, because it served me well to be the victim.
Well, it's only later in life that, you know, we're able to have some compassion for our parents, you know. And so, you know, my dad was very ill when I was growing up, and then also my mum, I would say she was a workaholic, so she wouldn't be around as much as sort of the little boy wanted her around.
Well, your mum had a career. There's a difference.
Well, I was going to talk to you about this.
Your mum had a career.
Yeah, and only later in life can I sit down with my mum and say, do you know what? Thank you for always working so hard that there was always food on the table.
Yeah.
You know, but you don't think of these things when you're a little kid. And what I find really sad is that we kind of turn this pain and end up abusing ourselves with it. You know, the pain sort of goes inward. And otherwise, why would we treat ourselves the way that we did in active addiction? It's clearly a way to deal with the pain, but unfortunately, we hurt ourselves.
Yeah, you know, that's the primary purpose.
Yeah.
That's the primary purpose. That's addiction.
Yeah.
It wants us to be hurting ourselves. It wants us to be sitting in a room killing ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, the thing where you said that your mum was a workaholic, your mum was successful.
She was.
Your mum was very
successful.
successful.
Do you remember my mum?
I know your
I was
mum
going to
very
ask you about
Of
this.
course I remember your mum. Anyone from that era who wouldn't remember your mum was living under a stone. Your mum was a very successful designer.
She was.
Very, very successful. And especially at that point in time, for women to be successful within that industry was a mighty hard feat.
Yeah.
You know, it still is today to a certain extent, but you know, back in the 80s and the 90s, it was a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
And your mum was very, very successful at what she did. When you say she was a workaholic, she you know, we kind of like to label everything as a holic, and you know, success is a different thing.
I think just as a little boy, I felt like I never had enough time with her, but also at the same time, my mum just is just an incredible woman.
I think probably
I'm very proud of.
You've probably
of my
never had
mum.
enough time. You probably thought no one had enough time for you.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I've known
relate.
you some time. You're still the same.
Yeah, and in your book, you talk about the King's Road. So my earliest memories were my mum had a shop on the King's Road, and she had a shop in Newburgh Street. So my earliest memories were just sort of crawling around stock rooms and building forts with boxes that had the Helen Story tape, and just these, you know, her logo are just sort of embedded into my brain as like the earliest things that I can remember. And also running around the clothes show. And
your mum's got stuff in the V&A. Does it not make you proud?
She does.
Does that not make you proud?
Yeah, of course,
like
it does.
all those hours that she didn't spend with you. There's a reason for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You know, the fact that your mum's got her own glass case in the V&A in the costume in the clothing department is a remarkable feat.
Yes, no, absolutely.
A remarkable feat.
No, I mean,
which you should be very proud of.
Nowadays, my heart booms for my mum. I can't believe how driven and ambitious and talented she was.
It now better.
Yeah, only later in life do you look back and go, you know, and also raising a child's not easy. I mean, my parents had me when they were fairly young, 26, which I thought 26 was an adult when I was young. Yeah, I'm now 38 and I still don't feel like a grown up. So at 26,
I'm 58. I'm still 16.
Exactly.
Literally still 16.
Yeah. So and there's no sort of you know, especially, I know that my mum had me before any of her friends had children. I was also an only child. So, like, you know, everything that came with that. And I remember one of my first therapy sessions, I said to my therapist, I've always been an attention-seeking little shit. And then he said, well, it's interesting that you have that opinion of yourself. And then I started to kind of, I guess that was the path to having a little bit more compassion for myself, because I was so used to kind of criticizing myself and insulting myself kind of thing. But, you know, even with the stuff that I've done, you know, being a DJ and doing some modeling and stuff, all the jobs that I've gone for unconsciously have had something to do with, look at me.
Even in meetings, when I used to see you back there, it was always look at you. Even when you shared, you would make it.
But can you identify?
Oh, 100%. Of course I can. But you know what? That's the difference now.
Yeah.
Today, I don't want that.
Right.
I don't crave that, because that is my life. Right. You know, I've always done my job throughout everything, throughout addiction, throughout recovery, to get to the point where I am in life now. I want to be Tony from Pimlico with the Cavapoo. I don't want to be Fat Tony 24 hours a day. It's now become, I tried to keep the two apart. When I was doing what I was doing prior to that, before the success of the book and everything else that's gone on with my career, where I am in life now is I long to go to Battersea Park and not have to stop and talk to people. I choose
walking the dog,
honestly,
being with your fiance.
Those are the most incredible moments for me. Because when I'm out and about, even if I go shopping with Stavvy, we get stopped 30, 40 times. Which is a really amazing thing. Oh my God, seriously, I would not change my life for anything. But some days it's like, okay, I don't see success in that way. I don't see success as being stopped in the street. And I really love the fact that people warm to, I've read the book, or they love what I do musically, and they love, so they want to tell you. It's an incredible thing. But, when you've been so honest and open in a book about,
people want to talk to you about it.
They want to tell you it. And they want to tell you it in the most inappropriate places, like in the men's toilets. Oh, I was abused. Or, these things. It's just an amazing thing. But, I long for that anonymity sometimes.
But you get it inside the safety of your home, or
I do, because the safety of Pimlico. Pimlico's a remarkable space. I go every morning for coffee with the scummy mummies from the school. I have coffee with them. That's just and like so many people have moved to my area now, living in Pimlico, so they all come. And we all have coffee every morning. It's like a ritual thing. With the dogs, Our dogs will bully all the other dogs. It's great. And then I go off and I do my day.
I think when you've gone to the heights that you've got to and the life that you lived before recovery, normality is the one. Like you start to really enjoy normality.
Well, you forget what normality is, and for me now, just... people go, how do you travel so much? Because it is normality. Me going tomorrow, I'm in Croatia. Go to Croatia tomorrow for 3 days. And I come back for one night. I'm in Brighton, playing at Brighton Pride. Then I go from there the next morning straight to Athens. And then I'm doing 2 Greek islands. And then I'm back on Friday, and I'm in, I think, Manchester, then Leeds. Sunday I go to Ibiza for 3 days. Then I'm back straight to Mykonos. This is how I live at the moment. And
your partner goes with you for quite a lot of it.
For a lot of the travelling, as much as he can.
Because I was talking to you about this the other day of when you're on your own doing gigs, it starts to really feel like work. But if you can bring your loved ones along with you, suddenly it's like, it's just a joy.
And everyone thinks, oh, it's only 2 hours. It's not only 2 hours. You know what I mean? Like a gig, the gig part is 2 hours. It's the getting to the gig, the airport. The minute I leave my house, it becomes work. It becomes work. And, the joys of having City Airport is a remarkable thing. That takes the sting out of everything.
I love City Airport. It's my favourite airport.
Seriously.
It's almost like a bus stop.
It's incredible.
It's great.
Just straight in, straight on, off. And because it's a tenth the size of other airports, it means it's a tenth of the hassle as well. And, it's just a breeze. So just that takes the sting out of a lot of stuff. But that's normal living for me at the moment. That is flying 3 times a week.
My happiest moments, because I've had my own journey with this stuff, and I think growing up with a famous mum, I kind of internalized that being famous was very important. Like of course. Because my mum was sort of kind of adored in that way, and I have also slowed down on that. I had a real problem with Instagram. You kind of mentioned it just before the podcast, and I used to try and really kind of extract validation and just sort of likes and comments and stuff, and like I think maybe a lot of this is an age thing, because I've really calmed down now, and I totally know what you mean about. That's why I mentioned the dog, like walking my dog on Hampstead Heath.
It's incredible.
There have been times where it's like, like I think this might be what peace is. Do you know what I mean?
It's freedom.
So I know exactly what you're talking about, and I was thinking when you spoke and you were speaking in your book about what it was like when you were in active addiction and when you were DJing, without me having reached the heights that you've hit. My time with Professor Green was quite similar, i.e. before I just got into Class A's before I got that job. So I remember flying out of City Airport, and we had like a residency in Ibiza, so we go there every weekend. At the same time, I was sort of DJing at the Box and this little place called Ping, and each weekend it was they were back to back, and I would do gigs having not slept for 3 days. Do you know what I mean? And it was awful. I mean, I don't know how I don't think I would survive that now. Do you see what I mean? And
we normalize it in the sense that for me, when I used to do the 3 or 4 days, I used to think I could only play when I hadn't slept for 3 days. I played better. This is how my thinking would be.
Yeah.
I played better when I was on day 3 than on day 1. And that was like my stinking thinking would tell me that.
Yeah.
By day 3, I smelt and looked like a dead goat.
Yeah.
But that was when I thought I played at my best, which was insane.
But you tend to think so on that.
It was just the worst ever. You know, literally, God knows how anyone ever supported me and came to come to hear me play.
The difference I think being is kind of you in a way were your own man, so it was your gig. Whereas with me, it would always start at a party with the Professor Green stuff, like an after party or a VIP, and I'd start using. But then the worst of it was when I got home, it would then just be a party for one.
Yeah.
And I can remember going, this is getting ridiculous. I'll just go till 4. And it gets to 4, and I'll go, okay, I'll just go till 5.
But using the word party is not really the right word.
I know, exactly.
It's not.
Exactly. And it was, but then what was horrible was having to turn up the next day and everyone else looking fresh and knowing that for them it's the next day and for me it's the same day.
Yeah, of course.
And at one point I was part of a band and they put me next to the drummer. So sound check, there'd be this drummer sound checking the snare drum right next to me going whack, whack. And I had on no sleep. It was just horrendous. And then his most popular song was Read All About It. And it makes me shudder when I hear that song because by that point I had drunk enough JD to just about feel normal again and then go again. So that song represents something so kind of shuddery for me. But I was going to ask you, looking back at that time, does that just feel, can you sort of believe that was you still? Do you feel, it just must feel like a past life? But
well, the beauty of it is a past life. And that no longer serves me in that sense. But the thing about it is right, what happened is, you know, you look back on that it no longer makes me shudder. It no longer makes me think, because I'm at peace with it. I've put it to bed. You know, I don't need to sit in rooms talking about it constantly, day in, day out. You know, that was the person that I was then. This isn't who I was meant to be. This is who I am.
Yeah.
And I've really made peace with it. It no longer, you know, it was a part of my life that got me to this point. It was a part of my journey.
Yeah.
You know,
you've also made a lot of amends since then. You talk about going into rehabs and sort of educating people.
But I made amends with myself, Luke.
Yeah.
I hadn't ever done that before.
Yeah.
I had not been at peace with myself. I still hated the way I looked. I still hated the fact that I'd wake up every morning thinking I was old. I'd think that I was fat. I'd think all these million one things about myself because I was not happy with who I was. I was still acting out in other areas. I wasn't, you know, I was no longer drinking or taking drugs, all right? But my addictions had shifted into either sex, food. You know, I was addicted to drama, so much so that I would create dramas. First thing in the morning, I would think of 1,000,001 dramas to create in my head and make them reality. And that was it. And, you know, then I become so addicted. You know, for me, I worked meetings, right? I didn't work a program. And it wasn't until I stepped back from it and looked at what I was doing and thought, okay, now I need to work a program, right? You know, I love it when people go to meetings religiously, like 5 meetings a week, you know, and then you step back and then they're like, oh my God, you're white knuckling it. I'm not white knuckling anything. I work my program more now than I've ever done in my life.
Well, you still have sponsees?
Yes, I still have sponsees.
What does your program look like for Tony?
So what do you mean?
Well, you have sponsees.
Yeah,
You're not really going
I
to
take
meetings.
sponsees through the steps. I go to much less meetings. I go to smaller meetings where there's like 6 or 7 older people than me, or 6 or 7 regular people that don't want to know my business, don't care who I am or what I do.
What's the most healing bit? Is it having sponsees, do you feel like?
I think the most healing bit is just seeing that glint back in someone's eye that when they change their life. For me, you know, my personal healing is the most paramount thing, because I can then pass that on.
Yeah.
What I was doing before was I was sponsoring people, but I was passing on chaos. I was passing on drama. So when I was doing their step work with them, I would pick up on the things that I hadn't dealt with myself. And it was like, you know, so now, you know, when I take people through the steps, or I point them where they need to be going in life, because it's a much different way of doing it for me now. My sponsorship has changed. I'm no longer, you know, read page 36 of the big book. I you know, that still exists, but I know most of that stuff off by heart.
Yeah.
You know, so now instead of me telling people how to do it, I'm showing people a way of doing it.
Yeah.
There's a real difference. It comes from a place of love and not a place of program. And that's the difference.
Yeah.
You know, because I've had quite a few sponsors in my time, and I've been around a lot of other people that sponsor other people, and the way they sponsor them, I just think there's no love in that. What you're doing is you're
sort of a box tick.
Yeah, well, you know, your basic, you know, anything with the word basic in it can fuck off in my eyes anyway. But you know, the fact that it's like it's a basic way of taking people through the steps, and then they're like, oh yeah, he's my sponsee. It's again, it's more ego building. Again, it's all about their ego and not the actual giving that person back what they need in life.
Yeah.
Because what they're doing is the more they I know people have got like 10, 12 sponsees that they harbour, and it's like, you know, for them it's a badge of honour. It's like being on RuPaul's Drag Race and winning a badge. That's what it's like sponsoring people for some of them. And you just think, okay, that maybe works for you, but that's not going to work for them moving on. Do you know what I mean? So for me now, it's a much different way of doing it. And, you know...
But it works for you.
It works for me. And you know what? The 12 steps have changed my life, and recovery is everything. Today, it's more about what I don't do in life is the most important stuff. That's what... Everything I have in my life is from what I don't do anymore.
I think also you and I, and perhaps addicts in general, we have to learn things the hard way.
Oh, of course.
Like, it has to get so bad, and we have to get to a place of pain where we're willing to change.
I would wear a pair of shoes that are too small for me until I can no longer walk in them at like 2 hours in. But I will still put them on and know they're going to kill me, but I will still do it.
Yeah.
Because I think, they might have stretched. No. They're a size too small for you.
Yeah.
Right, so what I've learned now in life is to buy the right size.
Yeah.
Even if they haven't got them, don't buy them.
Right.
If they haven't got your size and they've sold out, just let it go.
Yeah.
Let it go, Tony. You don't need to travel to Paris to get them. Get them.
Have you done that?
Oh, I've done that loads of times. Of course I have. You know, especially since Brexit, you get tax-free shopping, Luke.
Okay, right.
Yeah, I like a shopping addict, which is under control. But you know, the thing about it is you know, you learn these lessons, and everything gets so painful, and then the change comes.
Yeah.
But what I do today, I don't allow it to get painful anymore. I don't like pain.
No.
I used I used to wallow in pain. Pain used to be my aftershave.
Yeah.
The smell du jour that used to be
every
day, and I don't do pain well, and I'm never in pain.
Because I was thinking, time flies by, but I've actually known you for about 8 years now.
More than that.
Because I came in 2015, so that's 9 years, nearly 10.
I remember when you came in.
Yeah, nuts.
I mean,
completely nuts. Really? How's it now?
It's cute.
Okay,
yeah, but you look back with short hair.
Okay, good.
You went through
I'm happy you think
that
so.
whole long hair, like all over the place look.
Yeah. Well, I was doing all right as a model at that time. I think they wanted the Kurt Cobain look. I think that was in for a while. So I booked a couple of jobs off the back of that crazy hair. But yeah, you're right. And also
they wanted
I'm terrible
Kurt Cobain look, right?
Yeah. And also for me, I don't groom myself well. So we're having hair like this, you wake up and it's just like you're good to go. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. How do you think, you know, looking back on because in your book you talk a lot about what it was like clubbing back in the day. It's very, very different now.
Thank God it's different.
Well, I was going to ask you about this because now that we all kind of have iPhones and people are sort of less present, and do you think it's tamer now? than it used to be? I mean, it sounds like...
No, clubbing's not tamer. Far from it.
Okay.
I think that, you know, how things used to be back then, you know, it depends what chapter you're talking about in life. Because, you know, when we certain things happen at certain times, you know, like with the revolution of acid house and all of that happened because we lived in really, really troubled times in the sense of we were oppressed, we had Thatcherism, we had everything that we were going through. Yeah. That was a rebellion. That was a revolution. And acid house and the drugs that went with it was a much more mass thing. And I think a lot of it is to do with myth because we didn't have mobile phones and none of it was recorded. Everyone thinks that we lived in these crazy heyday times of like, oh my God, the world was turned on its head. No, it wasn't. There was a few hundred parties in the field all around, you know, every weekend all over the country, which got shut down pretty quickly. You know, and since the revolution of having mobile phones and everyone wanting to film everything, I think that's dying off a little bit now.
Do you see it less when you're DJing?
Totally.
People are more in the moment?
Totally.
Right.
Yeah, I think that, you know, people have realised they're never going to watch that set again. They film the whole set and then it's like it's on their phone. Yeah. That's it. It stays there. And I think a lot of people are now, it's starting to turn back around because they get bored of filming. And now they're getting back into the music. A lot of places are doing the whole, you can't have your phone on the dance floor. That's just drama. Shut the fuck up. Stop trying to control people. Yeah, I get it. Sometimes if you're doing small, intimate things and they've not seen you before, they all want to film you. They all want a photo. I got a brand and we did a party on Sunday, 338, 2,500 people. I do photos all day. That's what my job is. It's a part of my job.
What you mean when people want to have their photograph with you?
People want to have a photo. They want a selfie. That's what they do.
Yeah.
That's fine. You do it for them. So I put an hour and a half aside before the gig to do that at that event. So that it's done. And
so we get that out of the way so we can have some fun.
And now we have the party. And then people aren't filming. They've got what they came for. Yeah. They wanted that clip.
You've really... Do you think in your career embracing social media and because there is that kind of adapt or die thing, you know, and you've really embraced social media, and it was over lockdown when you started posting memes. Did you notice that did a lot for your career at the time?
My career went right up because, you know, I had a captive audience. So at the beginning of lockdown, we did the Mix Mag film, which was this like 18-minute film that's been seen by over like 12 million people. And throughout lockdown, it got viewed like 7 million times. So I had a captive audience. So people were always intrigued about who this person was. So then I started posting all the silly memes because we were living in a place of fear. People were scared to say anything. People were so feared up about the whole pandemic thing. We were being pumped full of fear from 6 a.m. in the morning when we woke up till 11 o'clock at night when we went to bed. We had people shouting at us about death, polls, levels.
It was a frightening time. No one knew what was going on.
And so what I wanted to do with that was just post stupid things that took away that pressure. And my popularity rose so highly. You know, I still get people coming up to me saying, "You saved our lockdown, thank you." Yeah. And then we started doing music from the garden.
Yeah, you started doing DJ sets from your garden.
Fucking on News at 10. The first one we did was made News at 10. You know, how crazy is that? It was like, you're on the news. And I was like, what? They literally live streamed it onto the news. And it was like, because no one was doing it. And then suddenly everyone else decided to do Facebook Lives. And you know, but you know, lockdown was a really magical time. I know what went on and how we lost so many people. Don't get me wrong, I'm not dismissing that. But what it did was it gave me time to actually reevaluate who I was. And that film that we did then went on to become the book because suddenly they'd used these taglines in that film from conversation, like Freddie Mercury gave me my first line of cocaine. And it suddenly became this awful tagline of my life. And I spent over £1 million on cocaine. They all sounded like boasts. And they weren't boasts, far from it. They were parts of conversation that the media love to take and use as your headline. So it makes you sound like the biggest wanker that ever walked the earth. So what I wanted to do was the idea of it, first of all, I did a really big interview with another magazine, with GQ. And in it, I was like trying to put it all to bed, saying that this was a part of that conversation. And then, you know, Mikey, who I did the book with, Hennigan, was like, there's a bigger picture. This needs to be done more. We need to do this. And I was like, yeah, well, so that's how the book came about. And I never ever, and this is the gospel truth, thought that anyone was ever going to read it.
Really?
I kind of thought that, we might sell 1,000 copies. I'd be really happy with that if it changed once.
Wasn't it a Guardian bestseller?
It was a Sunday Times bestseller twice over.
Wow.
It was the first week it came out, it went straight in at number 4 in the Sunday Times bestsellers.
Yeah.
Which was mind-blowing. I burst out, it makes my hair stand on. I burst out crying. They come and told me I was in Shoreditch, and my publicist came across the road and she was like, "You're number 4 in the Sunday Times." I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
I broke down in tears because it was like, what? I don't understand, because it was about, suddenly it had gone from being accepted, like being like, it was like suddenly, oh my God, people are reading it. Because the fear I had about that book, so the day we handed it in, we wrote it, and that night I went to bed and I woke up at 2 a.m. crying, and I wanted to get the book back.
When you sent it off and it was...
Yeah, I had to get it back. And I rang the publisher the next morning, Hannah, and I was like, I need to get it back. She was like, why? And I was like, I don't want it to go out. I don't want people to hate me. And I really thought people were going to hate me. I really thought people were going to read that stuff that I put in that book because of the honesty. And I realised how vulnerable I was. For the first time, I've never felt so vulnerable in my entire life.
And the day that it came out, how were you? I mean, that must have been anxiety
2 days after it came out, I was at the airport. And I was literally just about to get on the plane, and this big lady come pushing her pram towards me with her 3 kids and her husband. And the only reason I stopped to talk to him, this is like, I said it before, her husband was really fit. And I was like, oh, hi. She went, I want to work with you. And I was like, oh, God, she's read the book. She's going to start. And she went, I just want to give you a big hug. And I was like, what? She went, I've just read your book and I just think you're wonderful. And I want you to know that what you wrote in that, and I was just like, wow. And her husband was like, I'm reading it now. And it just was like that moment. I got on the plane and I sat on the plane and I started to cry because I just thought, wow, someone's actually read it and understands it. I mean, and that was the outcome from it all the way through.
I was going to ask you, I mean, I bet not a single person received that book negatively, and what was in your mind? I can't imagine. But I mean, having read it myself, all I have is sort of compassion and just sort of blown away by the honesty. And I think people really honesty like that hits people in the heart, because we've all got demons,
of course,
and you're laying them out there. And I actually think the book it would be very helpful to anyone who is struggling to read that book with addiction. It's
doing really well again at the moment, like really well again at the moment, because it's summer.
Right.
People read it on the beach. It's a summer read, and it's in every W.H. Smith's again, and it's everywhere again.
Yeah.
So I'm getting more and more messages every day of people like listening to reading it, but also it's on Spotify now.
Right.
So that's just took it to another level altogether, all around the world.
Well, I think that book's going to be forever relevant because addiction is always going to be here.
Well, they're turning it. I've just been working with Irving Welsh, and which was a dream come true. It still is a dream come true. I still have to pinch myself. And they're doing a film adaptation of it, of I Don't Take Requests, and Irving's written the screenplay. And it's...
Who's going to play Fat Tony?
Well, they're casting at the moment, which is kind of
weird.
It's all
why would you play Fat Tony?
No, I wouldn't. I'm too old. They're focusing on 85 to 95.
Okay,
so it's pre-acid house. It's a pre-AIDS epidemic in London.
Right.
And it's based in Soho. And... when we did the book, and you had these dreams of one day they might turn it into a film, and it was like someone said to me in one of the first interviews. I think it was actually for The Guardian, believe it or not. Funny you mentioned that earlier. They were like, "Who would you like to do if it was to be a film?" And I was like, "There's only one person I could ever dream of wanting to do that film." To make it would be Irving Welsh after Trainspotting, because it's like
amazing,
and it came true.
Yeah.
And I was in New York, and I was dealing with the American producers who had the rights. They didn't have they had the shopping agreement, and I had breakfast with them, and I'm sitting there, and then I had lunch with Tracy Emin, and me and Tracy were having lunch, and the phone rang, and they were like, "We got some news for you," and I said, "I've just seen you," and they were like, "Yeah," and they went, we couldn't tell you at breakfast because the deal hadn't been done, but Irving Welsh wants to meet you and wants to do the film. And I was like,
oh my God.
And I said it to Tracy, she went, oh, I love Irving. It was really funny. And it just, it was magical. And so, I've been working with him.
I can really see it as a film. It's going to make an incredible film.
Yeah, it's very dark and very twisted and very funny.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you make the AIDS epidemic funny? Because my book, every chapter has to end on a high. It can't end on a low. Someone's turned the page.
You're also going to have to become very close with the actor who gets the part because he's going to have to understand you on a very deep level.
Fuck, good luck to that for that. You know what I mean? I've only just got there after like fucking 58 years.
Yeah.
But it's a remarkable thing, when people accept you and accept your story and want to turn that story into something more wonderful, so that they understand it. It's. I wanted that all my life. I ended my book with one line of, all I ever wanted to be was loved. And then when I rewrote it, when you do a paperback, you have to put another chapter in.
Oh, right.
So you have to put two new chapters in to update. So we updated because, the book ended at the end of my relationship with David.
That was the edition that I read, so I've not read the last two chapters.
Okay, yeah. So then it updates with what's happened since that book.
Was that written much later? Oh, since the book had come out.
Yeah.
Right.
And
what was it like writing those chapters after knowing that the book has been out and done what it's done?
Amazing, because the fear had gone.
Yes.
And it had been replaced with love, and it had been placed with a newfound strength of identity.
Yeah.
I knew who I was. That book allowed me to become who I am. And it was like, for me, I describe it as the most thorough step 4 and 5 anyone will ever do, because I've always done step 4s and it was all a load of old rubbish. So I put in there the things that were so not important. The things that were important that week. That's like this person said this and I did that. What a load of shit, And when I wrote that book is just the most thorough step 4, and then reading it to do an audio book is step 5. Yes. I'm sitting there reading it out to the world.
Did you get emotional reading some of that stuff out?
Well, I'm dyslexic, so it was a journey. It was a very hard journey to do it because they kept booking me in for 2 days at a time, and I was like, no. It has to be 2 hours, otherwise you've lost me. And the first day they lost me, I started rummaging through drawers, and I was off. And so it took a short while to do the audio, but it's a very emotional thing because although you wrote a book and then you do the final read through, but you do it in different order. You do it in chapters. So I'd never actually sat and read the whole thing through from start to finish until I did the audio.
Right.
And that's why I think the beauty of the audio, I was like number 1 on Audible for like 6 weeks. It was insane. And it's, you can tell how nervous I am at the beginning of the audio book. And by the middle of it, you can tell I start doing accents and blah, blah, blah. I go into a role play. By the end of it, I get really emotional. You can tell the bits that really hurt. Yeah. Because, when we were recording it, they were like, you need to stop, because I was running.
Well, there's a difference between writing something and saying it. You know what I mean? And
it was a step 5, and it's within the journey. And I truly believe that for me, by saying it and reading it out loud, made it reality. Because when you write in chapters, they go to one side and then it all gets put together, and then you do a final read through and you flick through it because you think, I've been doing this 2.5 years. Do you know what I mean? And I had to, they gave me the final book and I had to go away with it and for 4 days and be on my own and read it. Because I just had to do it, because I just knew I wouldn't read it otherwise. I'd put it on the side. I'm writing book 2 at the moment, which is always the curse of book 2, but it's not that kind of book. It's a self-help book. It's called Have You Met Me? And it's about the 12 different versions of myself. So we go through life when you're a child and you're at school and all your friends have got like these brilliant lives. You pretend that you've got a brilliant life. You tell them, oh, my dad's a racing car driver. Or my dad's got a better job than he really did have. And they believe it. So therefore it serves you, right? Then you carry that on to the next chapter, to the next chapter. And before you know it, you're doing it all your life. You're never good enough because you've always made up this, you want people to like you.
Well, it comes back to the final line in your book of "I just want to feel loved."
That's
I think
what I ever
this
wanted
is
to be, was loved.
kind of what it's all
because
about.
I never knew how to be loved, because to love me would mean that you knew the real me. So with this book, new book, it's all about finding the real you by breaking down the barriers that we build throughout life, the ones that we, when people ask you if you're okay and you go, yeah, I'm great, and you're not, they're asking you if you're okay for a reason, because they can see it in your face. Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah. It's just about breaking down those masks, and I hate using that word mask because it's such a cliched word, but the different versions. So what we're doing with this book is putting all the funny stories in where I've lied about myself to people. Okay. Oh my God. Like literally, I still do it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But like literally just like I lie about stuff, like if I fancy you, I give you the big dick energy, cocky cunt version of myself. And then I walk away and you probably think, well, what a wanker.
Yeah.
Now, if I'd given you the real version, I might have stood a chance. Do you get what I mean?
Right,
and we do, that's what we do. And, we do it in everything that we do. If we want something, we manipulate it to getting it.
I'm not sensing any anxiety around the writing of this book.
No,
it feels different to the first.
It's really fun.
Feels like feels to me that you're enjoying.
I am, and
this.
also I've got like the sub chapters are by my trauma therapist. So she's every time we're going to do a chapter, we're going to give it to her. She's going to rewrite her version of that story of like basically what I did and how I did it and where I went wrong with it and stuff like that. So basically each chapter is going to be a therapy session within itself. So I'm probably going to come out of it looking like a complete and utter cunt at the end of it again, which is great by me because we're all cunts, and I own the fact that I can be the most stupidest cunt on the earth. Do you get what I mean?
Well, what's amazing, Tony, is after everything you've been through, you've come out smiling. And the one vibe that I get from even just sitting down with you today is that you're enjoying your life. And in a way, that's the biggest inspiration to anyone who's been through what you've been through, and thousands, millions of others that have had a similar story with Class A's and the abuse and everything that comes with that. The fact that you are now living your life and smiling after everything that you've been through, I think is the biggest inspiring thing about it all.
I'm going to be 18 years in January.
Wow.
What the fuck? And, and my life is incredible. I have freedom. I have self-respect. I have love. I can love. I love myself, so therefore I can love someone else. I allow someone to love me. And allows a really fucking big word.
I struggle with that
still.
Yeah,
of course. I'd much rather you hate me than love me, because that gives me a reason to push you away. But I can accept love now. I can accept praise. If someone used to come up and say to me, oh, I really love what you do, I'd be like, oh, fuck off. Go away. What do you want? Now I'm like, thank you so much. It means the world to me when someone tells me they love what I do.
Has this been a gradual thing for you? Because you talk about when you first got clean and still being mad and still, not having any self-love and fixing on all other things. Even from when I came in 2015 into recovery, I sense something very different about you now. And so has that been just a slow journey? Was there a turning point where you felt like you were actually able to let the love in? You were able to love yourself enough for someone to love you?
After the carnage of the last relationship I was in, and then Stavvy came into my life. So I met this guy 12 years ago on an app. I was living in Hampstead in my friend George's house. Wasn't allowed to have boys round.
Was that an abstinence thing?
Well, no, but basically what it was he was, Boy George's house, a mansion in Hampstead. And the rule was I was only ever staying there for a week, and I was there 5 years, like the cuckoo I am. And basically the rule was, don't bring boys around the house, and I was like, yeah, no problem. It was like fucking Sainsbury's, one in, one out. Anyway, I met this guy, we're chatting. He was at uni. He came to visit me. He came 2.5 hours to meet me. And he got there, and George came back that day. And I met him at Hampstead Tube, and I was like, my flatmate's come back. I'm really sorry you can't come to the house. But I know a really fucking good bush on the heath. So off we went to the bush. Now, he swears it was bonfire night because there was fireworks going off. I said it was the middle of summer, and he imagined the fireworks because the sex was that great.
And this is when you're sober, right?
This is when I was sober, but I was in sex addiction.
Okay.
So I was sober from drink and drugs, but I was still cray-cray. And I'd gone to, my addiction has shifted to sex. You know, I'll talk about it in the new chapters. And then, so basically what happened was, he went off, and the next day I rang him and said, do you want to go on a date? And he said no. So I told him to fuck off. And I was, how dare you say no to me? And the reason was he wanted to go off and he knew I was sober, and he wanted to go off and do his own journey. He was just experimenting with drugs at that point in time. And that was his journey. I'm looking for water, I've got it. And that was his journey. And then what happened was he went off. And then, of course, I got into that relationship, which became a very toxic place.
With this person?
No, with David.
Oh, okay.
And didn't see Stavvy ever again. And then at the end of my relationship with David, and halfway through writing the book, my life turned, it got very dark, very, very dark, very, very quickly. And there was an awful lot of stuff going on. And I hated who I was because I hated the relationship I was in. I hated the place I was in life. And also dealing with writing a book about the past brought everything up. I nearly had a breakdown, like a serious breakdown. And I wasn't doing very well. And then suddenly someone messaged me and was like, hey, blah, blah, blah. I'd love to meet up with you about recovery. And I was like, okay, Stavvy. He had a little problem with himself that we dealt with. And we just hit it off. We started shaking. I, at that point in time, still didn't know about the 12 years before. And it wasn't until like the third shag, because we weren't dating, we were shag buddies, that he said, we met before. And he told me that story. And I was like...
So you didn't remember him from 13 years ago?
No, I didn't until he told me the story. And then as soon
as you didn't remember his face? You didn't remember the fact that you'd had sex with him in a bush?
Well, no, because there's been like 450,000 of them,
Oh, my God.
It was a very busy heath. And... yeah, so basically we started dating, and it was at the end of lockdown, and I was like, okay, I'm secretly going to Ibiza at the weekend. Would you like to come with me? And we hadn't even slept together. We'd only been having sex. He'd keep the cab waiting some days,
okay,
and go back because it was lockdown. And he went, I'll come to Ibiza with you. So of course he had to be a secret. Because of what was going on in my life at that point in time, and I didn't want to involve him in it. And we went off to Ibiza and kind of never ever looked back. He's changed my life so remarkably.
What was it about you or about Stavvy that allowed you to let the love in this time round? You were just ready.
I was ready.
Yeah.
I was ready.
And you found the right one.
Yeah. And he wasn't ready at that 12 years ago, and now we're ready, and now we're getting married. We're getting married next year.
Congratulations,
the fuck,
Tony.
I'm getting married. And the thing about it is it's just like, he brings so much joy and happiness to my life every day. He is not in recovery. He drinks. He does what he does. I don't judge that. He's not got a problem with it.
No,
I look at him sometimes and think, I never had that kind of fun when I was doing what you're doing. And
we kind of thought it was fun.
I've always been in relationships when one person's drinking, and I'd be like projecting my stuff onto them. Oh my God, the night's gonna end up like this. I don't have that anymore. Stavvy does what he does, and I just laugh, and it's just like he makes me laugh, and then we go home.
Yeah, and
he's not in the other room doing drugs all night. He's in bed asleep. What's that about? Do you know what I mean?
It is still baffling.
Yeah, it is. But I'm learning to love that. And I no longer project my drama of how I used to be, because I'm so happy with who I am now that no longer is an issue.
My last girlfriend could have one Aperol spritz. And that was it. And I actually really liked, I liked having a partner who could drink normally, because it kind of made me feel normal.
Yeah, of course.
If you're kind of around people that are like, can't drink, it's like, it was just quite nice to have a girlfriend for a while who was normal.
I mean, I go to work and on my riders, Grey Goose, tequila, and everyone's like,
because you want other people to have a good time.
Like, you're in recovery. I'm like, this is not for me, it's for my friends. And they're like, does it not trigger you? why would it trigger? Not having drink on my rider would trigger me because it would make me feel like oh my God, can't have that around me. I can have anything around me because you know what? I got to the point in my life where I know I'm the problem.
Yeah.
That bottle of tequila isn't.
Yeah.
That bottle of Grey Goose isn't the problem. I'm the problem.
Yeah.
When it's switched on, and it's no longer switched on. I prefer my life to be problem free. So therefore, I know what I have to do, and I know what I don't have to do.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing.
Well, you've been speaking about how your program has sort of changed over the years, and I think you come to a place where you sort of figure out what works for you, and as long as you're feeling happy and content without drinking drugs, then your program is right. Do you see what I mean? And I think that, for addicts being, especially at the beginning, I think it does need to be more strict. Do you know what I mean?
Listen, there's lots of ways to skin a cat, right? And and I'm staunch 12-step programs. 12-step programs have kept me clean, and they've got me to this point in my life. And I, just because I choose to work it in a different way now, has not took me out of recovery. I'm more so in recovery than I've ever been. I talk about this stuff constantly next with people on planes, with people at airports. Everybody wants to talk
of it,
and it's
embedded into your life.
It's a different level of where I am in life and how I deal with it. I don't need to go to a church hall and eat broken biscuits and talk about that stuff and about the problem. As I said, I told you the other week on the phone that when I was doing trauma therapy, right in the middle of it all, and there was so much going on, and I would go to my therapist and I'd be like, oh my God, this is going on, that's going on. And one day she said to me, when did you last think about doing drugs? And I was like, 13 years ago, 14 years ago. She was like, and then about an hour later, just before I was leaving, she went, when did you last think about having a drink? And I was like, same time, 14, 15 years ago. Why are you still going to meetings? And I was like, what? Because that's why I don't go to meetings. I go to meetings because I don't want to drink again. She went, I can see 12 other problems here that you're avoiding by talking about something you did 13, 14 years ago. And I was like, wow. And I left and I just thought, she's only saying that because she doesn't understand the 12-step program. So the next session, I was like, look, I'm not being funny. What you said last week kind of like was really ignorant. The fact that you don't work a 12-step. She's fucking 18 years clean and worked a program better than, and it was like she was saying it to me because I was making so much drama about something that I no longer did to avoid the things that I do. And then I started to work on all the other problems. And they were what keeping me sick. Going to meetings and working on the stuff, the drink and the drugs that I dealt with and was dealing with for the rest of my life. But, all these other problems were keeping me in this place, in this prison. So I dealt with those stuff and I stepped back, and that's where my life's become so much freer because I'm no longer hiding from other problems by talking about past problems.
So
don't get me wrong, I'm not dismissing the fact that I'm an addict. I know exactly how my addiction works. If I have sushi on a Monday and it's really good, I'll have it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday until I'm sick of it. Until I think, oh my God, I can't touch raw fish ever again. Or I get a rash.
Then
I'll check. It normally comes out my face.
We typically abuse anything that we enjoy. Of course, come on. That probably won't ever change. I was going to ask you, Tony, so on the other end of the scale, for listeners that may have a drug problem and are ruining their lives because of addiction, perhaps they can't afford treatment because, as you know, treatment in the UK is incredibly expensive.
And it's going to be even more expensive with this new government. We love Labour, don't get me wrong. But,
what advice would you give to listeners that may be struggling with drug addiction, feeling like they're at the end of the road?
Open your mouth. If you don't open your mouth, you don't get fed. The most powerful thing will ever come out of your mouth and you'll ever say is, I need help. And when you say that, the relief that you get from it is like, I can sit at home even today and try and work out how to use the computer for something for hours, and then I throw the computer across the room and blah, blah, blah. And then the next day I'll say to Stavvy, I've been trying to do this, and he'll go, all you have to do is press that button. And I'm like, it's as simple as that. Just ask for help. Otherwise you don't get fed if you don't open your mouth. It's like, the minute that you accept that you've got a problem, It's not going to be a miracle cure, and it's not going to change overnight. You know, meetings only work if you want them to work. The 12 steps only work if you want them to work, right? And you have to want to change. But if you've got a problem or you see a little problem starting, just find your people and talk about it with those people.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you have to go straight away to meetings or you have to do this. There's many ways of staying clean and getting clean.
Yeah.
But just speak up and say, this isn't working for me anymore.
Yeah. That's great, Tony. I was thinking as well that, like, the reason why I like meetings is it's an opportunity for connection, you know, because addiction is lonely business and it often ends in total isolation. And I was thinking that the fact that you don't do as many meetings anymore, but your life is full of connection.
Oh my!
And I think that there's that the old chestnut of the opposite of addiction is connection, you know? So I think that's why meetings are a great place to start, because you can finally find people.
But also, Luke, not everybody gets to that point where they're locked in a room. I think that if you talk about stuff before you get to that point, right? Just because you're not sitting on a park bench drinking cider, or you're not putting a needle in your arm, or you're not robbing money out of your mum's handbag, right, doesn't mean you've got a problem.
Yeah.
Problems start much earlier than that. And I think that's when it needs to be addressed. I left it to the last point in life before I died to change, and I don't think everyone needs to do that. What we're finding now with this new the new generation, they're not drinking.
I was going to say that there have been days and times where being like a drug addict was kind of cool, and I think at the moment it's not the cool thing anymore.
No, far from it.
And thank God, you know,
and it's crippling our industry. It's crippling the nighttime industry. It's crippling bars and restaurants.
Yeah, because they're not making much money on the bar anymore.
There's like 237 pubs a week shutting down across the country.
I think being sober is cool now.
Sober is the most coolest thing in the world. And that's, because we make it cool. Right?
Yeah, yes.
and people go, oh, do you ever miss it? Do you ever miss it? I'm like, what the fuck? Why would I miss that?
Yeah.
I go to festivals and there's so many sober people at festivals. There's so many sober people clubbing. I have people come up to me and tell me how many days clean they are when I'm DJing. And I'm like, beautiful. That's incredible. And I embrace them.
Yeah.
Because, they're telling you, and it's like, they're telling you because they're proud. And it's a really remarkable thing. But I really love it when people say, I don't drink, I don't understand it. Wow, that's incredible. And that's the way it's going. And I think that as long as we stay on that kind of like level of people having fun without alcohol, because they realize alcohol is not fun.
Yeah,
it can be fun if you don't abuse it. Anything's fun if you don't abuse it, right?
Yeah.
Drugs are amazing, but I abuse them. I can't touch them. I abuse them. Alcohol, I abuse it because I have to abuse myself.
Yeah,
and I no longer have to abuse myself.
Well, it's such an amazing thing to be able to remove from your life. If I think about the hangovers, I mean, I would, like you, go for around 3 days, eventually pass out, wake up, spend the next 2 days sort of recovering. But all I was really doing is repairing myself for the next run. And to be on that cycle, I mean, I can look back on it now and go, that was so obviously unsustainable. But you don't always know that when you're in it. And now I just think, even just waking up without a hangover, without a come down, without wanting to kill myself, is such a precious thing.
This morning, I went out at 8:30 this morning to go take the dog for a walk in Pimlico, and there's this guy who's like, he sits on the wall right by my house every day drinking a quart bottle of vodka.
What a reminder for you every day.
I talked to him, and this morning I stopped him. I said, do you not ever get bored? He was on cider this morning, and I said to him, you're a really good-looking guy, and you've got so much going for you. He said, oh, I did a year, I was detoxed, and I sat with him for about 45 minutes. I was late to go and meet my friends. And I was just saying to him, the last thing you need is me lecturing you this morning. I said, but you know what? I see you every morning and you always go, nice trainers, nice this, nice that. And you know what? You could have all of this because I was in a worse state than you. I had no teeth. Your teeth are going. I said, I was homeless. I had nothing. Everything I have today, you see me every morning, you remark about my dog having a Louis Vuitton, a Gucci or a Louis Vuitton lead and harness. I said, that all comes from not drinking and taking drugs. And he was like, well, I could never get to that. I said, you can, because I did. And it's really simple, but you have to want to. And he was like, and I just went, I'm just going to go now and leave that with you. And I said, but you know what? It's getting worse because you're drinking cider. You were on vodka last week. Do you get what I mean? He was like, oh, listen. But, you know, it's just about taking that time to talk to someone.
Yeah.
And saying to them, you know, planting the seeds without lecturing. Do you know what I mean?
100%. Yeah.
And you know, it might not change his life. It may be one day.
Well, you may have planted a seed.
That's all that
matters. As you say.
Do you get what I mean? Because every morning he comments about my trainers. Oh, you got so many trainers. I'm like, where do you think they come from? They come from one place and one place only.
Yeah.
Recovery.
It's
they don't
interesting.
come from Bond Street.
No.
But they do. But that comes from recovery.
It's interesting what you were saying. Oh, this microphone's gone a bit funny. Has it? 1, 2. Acquiring things in recovery, right? So my pattern, I've realised, Tony, is that I've had 3 years clean twice.
Yeah.
So clearly I have a problem with year 3. And what it is for me, and you were speaking about acquiring stuff, like you know, you get clean, you get all the clothes back, your life comes together, you start getting working and stuff. And I've realised what my problem is, and I forget that it's a spiritual program, because what I do is I get clean, I sort my life out, life gets really good. And then suddenly the things that I thought I wanted, I thought I would feel like I've arrived when I get such thing. So if I get, you know, if I get my career in a certain place, if I get the right amount of money, if I'm dating the right girl, and I get
fear.
To this, I get
it's all fear-based, Luke.
I think I get to a point of crisis where I suddenly realise there's no beach I can sit on, there's no t-shirt I can wear or trainers that I can wear, there's no one I can date that will fill that, and that's where I reach. It's almost like a spiritual crisis, and that's the problem that I get to. And so this time around, I just kind of have to remind myself that it's about other people. Because if it's about what can I get, I'm sure you have reached that point as well, Tony, right? Where you've had everything you thought you wanted and it wasn't enough.
It's not about...
Do you know what I mean?
Look, it's not about the new shoes. It's not about the new T-shirts. It's not about the new house. It's not about the new watch or the new car. It's about the new you. It's about the new boundaries. It's about the new freedom. And it's about the new love that you find for yourself. Those are the important things.
Yeah.
The stuff that I said on this other hand come from that.
Yeah.
Right? And that's where the change comes.
It's so easy to sort of... I mean, you must have had your own journey with that. If you know, if I get all my ducks in a row, if I have all the money and everything.
I've got more Dior than Dior. All right, I've got more. You know, literally. You know, they come to me sometimes and ask me for archive. That's how much of it I have. They're like, "Have you got that piece? We know you've got it." I'm like, "Yes, I have." You know, that's the journey. Right?
Yeah.
And you know, the way I look at, I have all of that only because I have everything else.
But do you find that sitting down with a friend and talking honestly ends up being more fulfilling than how much
100%.
Dior's in the wardrobe?
Sitting next
and
to strangers on planes, or sitting next to people. I was going to say on buses. I don't get buses, but sitting like next to people in restaurants that come over and take the time to talk to you because they have.
That's the really fulfilling thing.
That's the point. That is the point when someone comes up to you and says, "Listen, my daughter's got a real problem. Can I talk to you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Do you know how many messages I get a day on Instagram where social media comes into play? I have so many people inbox me on a daily basis telling me about their brother or about this or about that, or asking me, could I send them to rehab or help them get to this point? And it's like, it's remarkable.
That's the fulfilling bit.
That's
and
the
I
magic.
think that...
Luke, that's the magic.
Yeah.
That's the bit where and you know what? I reply to everybody that messages me. Anybody that messages me about that stuff, I will reply to them. If you message me and tell me you can get me more followers, you can go fuck off. Because I get 400 of them messages a day as well.
I think they're all auto
Yeah,
bots.
of course.
Yeah.
No, some of them are real people because they get really offended. I have arguments with some of them, but you know, it's like, but those other messages are what makes it all so magical. Because they're looking at you and thinking, oh my God, I want what he's got, which is what our 12-step program is about. It's what sponsorship is about.
Yeah.
We've had to find someone that we look at and we think, I want what they've got. I want that freedom. I don't want those shoes. I probably do want those shoes. You know, I used to go to rooms and look for sponsors by the size of their packet. I'd go around looking at all the crutches in the room. I mean, he looks like he's got a big dick. I wouldn't mind him sponsoring me. What the fuck? Do you get what I mean? That's where when I first went in. Then it moved on to shoes. Right. He's got nice trainers. Maybe I'll ask him to sponsor.
Do you know my first? It's mental, funny when we
it?
Come in. The reasons why we choose the sponsors we have. The first person I asked to sponsor me, he was a photographer, and I thought, when he hears my 4 and 5, he's going to put me on the cover of Vogue.
You twat. But that's what we do.
And he was a skateboarder, and he was really cool. But that's what you do when you first come in, you know. It's kind of like.
Didn't you have a film producer as well at one point? A director?
Not as a sponsor. No, I don't know.
Was it Nick sponsoring you?
So my first.
Was it Nick sponsoring you?
Nick, well, we can't really say his second name, can we?
No, you know.
No, I've never had a sponsor called
okay,
him.
fine.
But my first sponsor was, he was very cool. He was a skateboarder, photographer. Thought he might put me in Vogue once he got to know me. My second one I picked, he was sort of like a dad figure. I've got weird, like, daddy issues. I really do.
And I picked that up from you day one.
And whenever I'm kind of sitting down with another man, especially if I'm reading out step work, they always say to me, you can slow down, because it's so unnatural for me to feel like this man is giving me his time and his love that I feel like it's about to run out at any moment.
Of course.
So every sponsor I've had, they're like, you can calm down. Just I'm here. It just sort of feels really unnatural.
You're so gay.
But no, and I can relate to the sort of judge. You know, you get sort of very judgmental at the beginning, and it's amazing how much the ego, how quickly it repairs itself from being on death's door to suddenly feeling like you're better than everyone.
Well,
it's quite remarkable.
This meme that I used to post saying that gays are at the most powerful when they've had a haircut. And it's so fucking true. You don't get anyone more powerful than a gay that's just had has had a haircut.
Yeah.
Because it's that newfound sense of, like, I look fucking great. No one's going to fuck with me. And it's the same with recovery. When you come in and suddenly they get their teeth done, or they've had their hair cut, or they start to shape up, and suddenly the ego comes back, and it's like they're wearing Y3. And it's like you're like. You look at them and you just think, here we go. Yeah. Here we go. I had a sponsee that came to me so many times, and each time his ego would take over, the hair got bleached, he started dating other people, and literally, and then suddenly he'd go again because his ego got involved. He'd start dating the wrong people.
Because it wasn't enough.
No, it's never enough. And he's just done exactly the same thing again. Was homeless, blah, 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 came back. I bumped into him in the street. He said, will you sponsor me again? I said, no, I won't sponsor you. But what I will do is I will be here for you and help you. So I started doing that. And then he said to me, look, I can't do this without you. And I said, okay, I'll do this temporarily with you. Then 2 weeks ago, the ego came back, the hair came back. Oh, I went and got Botox yesterday, and the girl who did it, I got her number. I was like, here we go again. And I pulled him on it. I said, listen, let's break this down, what you've just done here. Exactly what I told you not to do is back. 2 days later, I get a phone call. I don't think you're giving me enough time. You're always traveling. You don't return my text messages. One text message. I said, I was filming yesterday. I couldn't return your text message yesterday. I returned it this morning. Well, you need to make time for me. I said, listen, this ends here. I wish you well. You're not my sponsor. I was doing this out of the kindness of my heart. I don't work for you. Yeah. I said, and this program isn't going to work for you with that ego either. Go and choose someone else very wisely. God bless you. Yeah. I put the phone down on him. I haven't heard from him since, because I know exactly where he is and what he's doing, because the ego had come back and it had taken over again. Yeah.
It's amazing how we can't see our own patterns quite often.
We can't.
Do you see what I mean?
And it's a shame. But you know what? That's his journey.
Yeah.
That's his journey, and God bless him.
Yeah. We're very, as addicts, quite entitled people, aren't we?
Oh my God, the worst.
The level of entitlement is astonishing.
It's unreal, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
But I think the most important thing...
getting beauty tips from someone with no teeth and really bad skin. Oh, you know what you're doing wrong? You should use this cream. And you're like... You know what I mean? Okay, thank you for that. Yeah. Where they tell you where you're going wrong in life. And it's like, okay, I kind of been there and done that. And, I was the same. I would say to people, oh, you're using the wrong, Yeah. Like, I look like the Mummy Returns.
Giving beauty tips.
Giving beauty tips to people. Yeah, you know where you're going wrong.
I think ultimately it's just about remembering that it's about connection, and it's fine to have the material stuff. In fact, who doesn't love nice clothes and nice cars and holidays or traveling? But if we get too caught up in that and start expecting for the fulfillment to come from those things, quite quickly I've experienced you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And it's about other people and connecting with others and helping others, which I know you do all the time, whether it's through responding to messages on social media or sitting next to people in planes or fans of yours that come up to you and tell you that, you know, they're such and such, however many days or months sober. I just wanted to, you know, I feel like I'm talking to someone whose heart is full. I really sense it with you.
You know what? I will sit here and I'll accept that because my heart is full.
Yeah, and
My
I
heart
really sense it in
full,
you, Tony.
and I've never been so happy in my entire life. Within my private life, my personal life, everything, every area of my life is amazing. You know, some days the worst thing that can happen to you is my battery will run out on my iPhone, and God forbid I'm untouchable, uncontactable. Ooh,
I do this thing where I put my phone on airplane mode before I go
Yeah.
to sleep, and it's such a lovely feeling. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, no calls.
yeah.
You know,
No, I
what
get
are
that.
you like in the mornings? Do you jump straight on your
I'm
phone?
such a morning person. I'm up. I'm full of.
I
life.
love the mornings.
Yeah.
People like I hear a lot of people.
I'm getting better. I pull it down a bit now because I need to spend more time with my dog.
Yeah,
And
people
she's in bed next
struggle.
to me all
A
the
lot of
time.
people I know struggle in the mornings, but for me,
No.
I really look forward to my first coffee. I can't stop vaping, but one thing at a time. And I just love. I and also for me, I've committed to exercise, which has completely changed my life, and diet. And I've realized that I wake up sometimes I go to one of the first great feelings I had in recovery, and I don't know if you can relate to this, Tony, was I would go to sleep and I'd be looking forward to the next day. When nothing particularly exciting is happening, but it's just you start
day.
getting that youthful, you know, some days it's like when you're a kid and you're waiting for Christmas the next day,
Yeah.
and it's that feeling of
Yeah, it's
feeling a
amazing.
little bit like a kid again. And just being excited for the next day when not necessarily anything exciting is in the diary, but you get that lust
She's
for
excited
life.
every morning when she wakes up, and I love that.
Yeah, I do think dogs are quite often better than people. I
Oh, cool.
love.
What do you mean? Quite often, mate. 100%. Seriously.
Yeah, I felt like I
I
learned.
know every dog's name in Pimlico. I don't know any of their owner's name, and that's for a reason.
Yeah.
And as soon as I start to know the owner's name, then they always it changes the whole dynamic.
Do you know? So like, I always get a bit nervous before these podcasts, right? But as soon as we press record, then it's fine and we're flowing and it's all good. And I was really quite nervous this morning, and then Ruby, the dog outside, I started holding her, and immediately my anxiety just went so low. And I think the amazing thing about dogs is that they're always 100% present. They don't hold grudges. And they just want to have fun. They just want love.
It's unconditional. As long as you give them treats and food, it's a great relationship. Do you know what I'm saying, Jay?
No, it is. And my life has always been 100% better when there is a dog in my life. I don't have a dog at the moment, and I don't like not having a dog in my life.
You should get one.
It's just so like, it feels like the missing piece.
Well, you know, if you want one, it'll come to you. You know that. That's what happens.
Yeah.
And you know, my life is full of love and dogs constantly, and you know, wherever we travel in the world, I'm forever meeting new dogs.
What I really like about what's going on for you, Tony, is it seems to me that you're enjoying your personal life just as much as your professional life, and to have those, because there have been times where professionally you're up and everything's going well, but you might go home and just be lonely.
It was awful.
Or you could be in a relationship and you know, career not going so great. I think I would prefer the personal life to be right first. I'm not sure about you, but like, you know, to be able to go home to a life that you love.
When you're happy, it shows in everything that you do. And when you're unhappy, you know, for me, especially with my career, everyone knows that I'm in a good place by the way I play. The way I am when I travel, the way I am. Because when I'm in a happy place, I make the world a happy place.
Yeah.
When I'm unhappy, the world's an unhappy place.
I also think it's quite hard for good things to happen to you if you're not in a good place.
Well, you build walls. You don't allow them in.
Yes,
You don't allow
and
good
so
things to happen.
we all need, like, whether it's a recovery program or a way of living that can make us happy, you know. And for me, that is 100% staying clean and sober. I am. You mentioned it in your book briefly. I'm obsessed with the gym. I know it doesn't look. I'm not sitting here looking like Arnie.
You know what? I am.
I
hate it.
What
but
it
I love
does,
it.
what it does for the mental health.
So
is
I'm there
just
4 days a
unreal.
week
It's
at the
cured my
moment.
depression, Tony. It's remarkable.
4 days a week I go. And
Yeah, same.
you know, I'm obsessed by the rings. I'm obsessed by
What
lifting
would these?
myself up.
Okay, right.
I lift my knees up to my head and I hold myself. And I do, I do like I love it. Honestly, I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I hate lunges and I hate weighted lunges.
But the feeling after your
when
workout,
I leave, it's incredible.
It's just like there's no, and if you work out in the morning, I'm fine for the rest of the day. It quietens the head. Everything else sort of feels more doable because you're like, well, if I've just gotten through that at 1 hour of hell, I can definitely go and do this meeting or
Honestly,
you know,
negative pull-ups and downs. I'm holding myself and lowering myself. It's just incredible. I couldn't lift my own body weight when I started.
It's very nice when you see progress as well.
I do a plank for 2.5 minutes. What the fuck?
I've now got to the point where, because at the beginning of when you start going to the gym and prioritizing your health, you make a lot of progress really quickly, but then you kind of level off. And now I'm at this bit where I'm headed into sort of some kind of body dysmorphia where I'm never satisfied with the way that I look, even though, and so I'm having to manage that. And, I love eating, but like sometimes I give myself a hard time for having a pizza now. It's like it's now can go unhealthy in that direction. So if it's not one thing.
Listen, you can have whatever you want as long as you work in other areas.
Yes.
It's like recovery. It's like, I say this to all my sponsors and I say this to everyone I meet who wants to know it. That you can do absolutely anything you want in recovery if you do it in a positive way. Right, whatever it is, I truly believe that there is no such thing as I can't in recovery, because you can, as long as you do it in a positive way. Don't get me wrong. Oh, you can't drink in recovery. We know that. I'm not on about that stuff. But anything is possible in life if you want it, and that's a fact.
Well, you're proof of that, Tony.
It's a fact. If you want it, if you want to find happiness, go find it.
Yeah,
we'll find it. It's about it. We go through life living in like that, why? It's about flipping it and turning it into how. And it's about how can I change this way I feel? Why do I always forget? Why is this always happening? How can I make sure this doesn't happen to me? It's really simple stuff. And I truly believe that you can do absolutely anything. I can go anywhere in the world. I can do, apart from guitar, I can do anything I want to do in life because of recovery, because I believe in it. And that's it. It comes from belief. The fact that, it starts with hope and then it moves on and it progresses and then suddenly it becomes belief. And I truly believe that if you want something bad enough, you can get it.
Well, from coming from the man that you were, that you described so vividly in your book, to the human being that is sat in front of me today, you, ever since I've known you, you've been inspiring and you've been a shining light, Tony. And I know you're going to continue to be that. And congratulations on getting engaged.
Getting married, man.
Getting married.
I'm actually going from here to the church now for a production meeting. Getting married at the old Limelight, which is fucking mental in itself. Because I wanted to get married originally in this church in Earls Court, which was where they did all the AIDS burials in '85. No other church would bury anyone.
Right.
And this one vicar would do it in Earls Court. But the church is too small, and also people like myself can't get married in churches at the moment because of rules and regulations.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Certain religion. That's life. That's where it is. So I'm getting married in the old Limelight, which is very reminiscent because that was when 84, 85, right at the beginning of the AIDS epidemic is when the Limelight opened. And all of those people that who are no longer with us, that can't come to my wedding, that should be at my wedding, will be at my wedding because we're doing it in that building. Will
it be a big wedding or small wedding?
It's a fucking massive wedding.
Okay, yeah, I would imagine so. I would expect nothing less.
I shit you not. It's got everything that the biggest gay weddings that London's ever seen.
Okay.
The people that are singing the first dance, there's so many incredible things going to happen on it.
Yeah.
Because why not?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Of course.
It's a fucking remarkable thing. It's not going to happen again.
Yeah.
I'm not getting married to anyone else.
Yeah.
It's a
beautiful
turning
thing
point in my life. And, it's got to be a big day.
He
deserves to have a big day.
Yeah. And so do you. And so do you.
So do I. I know I do.
Yes.
I truly do.
Yeah.
Because I've worked all my life to get to this point of happiness.
You have. And it's you deserve it.
Yeah, thank you.
You've put a lot of work, into your.
No, I have to go because.
Yes, I know that you do. Tony, just want to say, I got so much love for you. I do love you. I've known you for quite a while now, and I really appreciate you coming down. Thanks so much.
To the arse end of nowhere.
Yes.
Where are we? White Hart Lane.
We're in Barnes.
The fucking.
I'd never been to Barnes before I did this podcast, but here we are.
Liar.
Thank you, Tony. Thanks, everyone, for listening to this episode of I'm As Shocked As You Are. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next time.